What's up, everyone? What's going on? This video you are watching right now is the year in wrestling 1993 part 5. This will be my last video for the year 1993, and I'll start doing 1994, the year in wrestling, in a couple days. Anyways, I'm going to first talk about the world champions, some of the world champions in the WWF and WCW, and I'm not talking about the other titles. I'm talking about the World Heavyweight Championship belts that were held by, for most of the year, by Yokozuna, a great big man, and Vader, Big Van Vader, another great, awesome big man, one of the best in the history of the business. So, Yoko won it at WrestleMania 9 after he won the Royal Rumble, and he did not even hold it for one day. He lost it probably 30 seconds or a minute later to Hulk Hogan. And then Yoko got it back, won it in June 93, held it for the rest of the year. So he had a 6-month title run in 93, and it went on to 94. And Vader, the other world champion in WCW, started in 1993, the World Heavyweight Champion, and he lasted the entire year as the WCW World Champion until December at Starrcade 93. He lost it to Ric Flair. The point I'm making is Vader and Yokozuna were both world champions, both great big men, and they were both world heavyweight champions in their companies because they were both awesome and great talents. So Vader, Yokozuna, both world champions, and I was a big fan of both of them. I wasn't a fan of Yokozuna at the time in 93, but as I look back on it now, I can see that Yokozuna was a great big man, and I was always a fan of Vader's. Okay, I'm done talking about Vader and Yokozuna because they were basically the world champions that everybody remembers in 93. Now I'm going to talk about, before I talk about something else, I'm going to talk about an incident that happened in October, I think at the end of October 93, just a news item that happened in Europe in a hotel. WCW was on tour, and a big fight happened, I think in the hotel lobby or the hotel hallway where you come out of your room. And the fight was between Sid Vicious and Arn Anderson. What happened was crazy, and somebody could have died, somebody could have got killed that night. It was that insane what happened. What went down was, I don't know who started the fight. I don't know what happened, but I think Sid snapped and got really angry at Arn Anderson. Maybe it was something he said made Sid snap. I don't really know. Who started the fight? I don't know. All I know is I heard Too Cold Scorpio tell a story about this fight, and when he got there, that Arn Anderson was bleeding a lot and basically could have died right there, and basically needed an ambulance right away to go to the hospital because he was bleeding to death. So Arn Anderson and Sid have a fight, and Sid stabs Arn Anderson with a scissors like probably 10 times, maybe less, maybe more. But that's just insane to be stabbing someone with a scissors. I don't know what got Sid so angry. I don't know what set him off. But if anybody ever sets you off, it doesn't mean you have the right to shoot them with a gun or stab them. It's wrong. I don't know what the hell happened, and it was a real tragic story, and the fight should have never happened, but it did, and very happy nobody was killed in the fight, because Sid could have been murdered or stabbed, and Arn Anderson could have died. So after that incident where Sid stabbed Arn with the scissors over and over, Arn had a lot of stab wounds, and he would not return to the ring in November, December, January. I think Arn Anderson came back in February '94. So he was out for probably 4 months, 3 months. He was out of action to recover. And what happened to Sid was, I think WCW fired him for the incident, or they released him, or they both agreed that Sid would leave, because obviously he did something really bad. So he's probably fired, is my guess. Okay, now I'm going to talk about some of the winners in 1993 of the Pro Wrestling Illustrated Awards. The Wrestler of the Year for '93 was Big Van Vader. Great pick, and I agree with that. Runner-up was Bret Hart. And Bret Hart was the world champion in the beginning of '93, from January until WrestleMania 9. I think WrestleMania 9 was in April. Tag Team of the Year for '93 was Rick and Scott Steiner, and the runner-up was the Hollywood Blondes. Match of the Year for '93 was Shawn Michaels versus Marty Jannetty. I don't know if that match is from their Raw match or from the Royal Rumble '93. I'm not sure. Runner-up match of the year was the Steiner Brothers versus the Heavenly Bodies from SummerSlam '93. Feud of the year in '93 was Bret Hart versus Jerry the King Lawler. They had a great feud. Jerry Lawler talked a lot of trash about Bret Hart's family and his mother and father. Jerry Lawler basically ripped the Hart family every interview he did in '93 on television. Runner-up for Feud of the Year was Dustin Rhodes versus Rick Rude. Most popular wrestler of the year for '93 was Lex Luger. Runner-up was Sting. Most hated wrestler of the year for '93 was Jerry the King Lawler. Runner-up was Big Van Vader. And I agree with that. Lawler was really hated and had a lot of great heat in the WWF in '93. Most improved wrestler of the year for '93 was Yokozuna. Runner-up was the 1-2-3 Kid. Inspirational wrestler of the year for '93 was Cactus Jack. Runner-up was Lex Luger. Rookie of the year for '93 was Vampire Warrior, also known as Gangrel from the Brood in the Attitude Era days. The runner-up was, never heard of this guy. His name's Robbie Eagle. I don't know who that is. Comeback of the year for '93. Winner was Lex Luger. Runner-up was Brutus the Barber Beefcake. Brutus would return for a very short time after that he had that bad accident that crushed his face and cracked every bone in his face. He needed reconstructive surgery on his entire face. So Brutus did return, but he only had one match, and it was at WrestleMania 9. And then he was gone, left the WWF. Because I'm sure they didn't want to re-sign him and use Brutus anymore because he was getting really lame. His gimmick was not... Nobody cared about Brutus anymore in 93. His gimmick was lame. And nothing against Brutus personally. I'm just saying his gimmick was really outdated and old. So the comeback of the year, as I said, winner was Lex Luger. And runner-up was Brutus Beefcake. Now I'm going to talk about some of the rosters and give my opinion which was the best roster in wrestling in 93 before I talk about Survivor Series 93. In WCW, I'll read some of the talent that they had, and they had some great talent, some really good young talent, and some veterans that were really over still in WCW 93. They had Barry Windham. He had a run as NWA champion for a long time, from from February until June. Barry Windham was there. Sting, Vader, Cactus Jack, Hollywood Blondes, Steve Austin and Brian Pillman, Steven Regal, Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat, Rick Rude, the British Bulldog, Arn Anderson, Harlem Heat, Dustin Rhodes, the Shockmaster. That was a joke, obviously, but he wasn't a big star, but the Shockmaster was on their roster, but not for very long. Too Cold Scorpio was there. Marcus Bagwell was there, and the Nasty Boys were there. I'm sure I missed some other talent. Paul Orndorff, legend. Paul Orndorff, he was there. I'm sure I missed some other people, but that's the main stars that I cared about in WCW. So they had a really good roster, great roster. In the WWF in 93, they had a great roster also, mixed with a lot of young talent and guys that were hungry and ready to be pushed. Guys like Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Diesel showed up in May or June on a Raw. Diesel debuted in 93. Tatanka was there. The Steiner Brothers, Yokozuna, Mr. Perfect, the Head Shrinkers, Razor Ramon. Great talent, great gimmick. Macho Man Randy Savage basically did a lot of commentary in 93 and did not wrestle much at all. He was like retired. He would return to have one match on a Raw and a Battle Royal for the Intercontinental title. I think it was in October or September 93. But that wasn't a big return because Macho Man just returned and was in a Battle Royal. It really meant nothing and did nothing for Macho Man. He was also, Macho Man was in the Royal Rumble 93 match, but he got thrown out by Yokozuna. And also Macho Man would wrestle at Survivor Series 93 later in the year. So, and he did wrestle on European tours in 93. In Europe, on UK tours, the Macho Man would still wrestle. And I think he did have a few pretty good matches with Shawn Michaels, or maybe that was in 92, that Randy Savage worked with Shawn Michaels. It could have been still in 93. They could have still been working at house shows. I don't really know. It's just a guess. They had the Quebecers. Pretty good tag team. The 1-2-3 Kid, great young talent. The Smoking Guns, their gimmicks were pretty cheesy, but they were still young guys and they were hungry to succeed. Smoking Guns, pretty good tag team. And Hulk Hogan was there. Short time. Only wrestled twice on WWF pay-per-views and never wrestled on Raws. Only wrestled at WrestleMania 9 and King of the Ring 93. And Hogan would wrestle for the WWF in Japan. I think in January 93, Hogan wrestled in Japan against the Great Muta. So WWF had a great roster. ECW in 93. This is their roster. Some of the guys they had. They had Terry Funk, Eddie Gilbert, Shane Douglas, Sabu, Tommy Dreamer, Taz, Jimmy Superfly Snuka, Kevin Sullivan, Don Morocco, and very lame. Nobody cared about him really, but he was there. The Sandman. I'm not saying the Sandman is lame because he wasn't. I enjoyed his entrance later on in 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, and even in 2000. The Sandman had a great entrance and it was entertaining to watch. But he was never a great wrestler, and I'm sure he would admit to anybody that he wasn't a great wrestler, and he was just like an entertainer and a barroom brawler street fighter. So, WWF, WCW, ECW, they all had great, pretty good rosters. ECW, not as good of a roster as WWF and WCW, obviously, because they were a really small promotion and company at the time. And I could argue, I'm sure a lot of people could argue with the roster. Which one was better? Was WCW better in 93? Or was WWF better? Or was ECW better? I'm sure tons of people could pick their favorite, and I'm sure different people have their favorites of if they were a big WWF fan and did not watch WCW, or if they were a WCW fan and did not like WWF. So I could go both ways. With WWF, I could pick WWF. They had a great roster, and I was a fan of theirs in 93. And I could go with WCW. They had a great roster too. So both ways, I could argue with people about this for hours and hours and hours. I could listen to different people tweeting me on Twitter, whatever, telling me why they think the other roster is better than the WWF or whatever, or which was their favorite roster. I could talk about this for hours with people and debate on it, but I have to pick and go with WWF because of Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels were there, and they were both in their prime, and they're Hall of Famers, and they're two of the all-time greats ever. So I picked the WWF roster in 93 as the best. Now I'm going to talk about Survivior Series 1993 pay-per-view from Boston, in the Boston Garden, the old Boston Garden. First match was Survivor Series elimination match. It was the team of the 1-2-3 Kid, Marty Jannetty, Razor Ramon, and Macho Man Randy Savage defeating. And Macho Man Randy Savage would take the place of Curt Hennig. I think Curt Hennig got injured, so he was out for a long time, and He would not appear in the WWF to wrestle at all in 94 or 95. He did return at WrestleMania 10 as a special guest referee, but Mr. Perfect, he looked out of shape in 94. Like he must have still been injured. I think he still had a back injury, so he looked pretty overweight at WrestleMania 10. So I don't think he was cleared to wrestle by any doctors. So that's why he did not in 94 or 95. So, as I said, Razor Ramon's team defeated the team of IRS, Diesel, Rick Martel, and Adam Bomb. Up next, you had another Survivor Series. The entire pay-per-view is Survivor Series elimination matches. There were no title matches on this show. There were a lot of Survivor Series back in the day did all elimination, tag team elimination matches. That was the concept, the original concept of the Survivor Series. Who can survive and who does survive. That was basically the concept, and it was a great one. Bret Hart and the Hart family. Bret Hart and his brothers were on his team. His brothers, Owen Hart, Keith Hart, and Bruce Hart, defeated Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels actually replaced Jerry the King Lawler in this match. I don't know what was wrong with Jerry that he couldn't wrestle. Shawn Michaels' tag team partners were obviously supposed to be Jerry Lawler's tag partners. They were the Black Knight, the Red Knight, and the Blue Knight. So obviously they were supposed to be with the King, Jerry Lawler. And I think one of the Knights, I don't know which one, either the red or one of the Knights was Kane, I believe. I heard that one of the Knights was Kane. So the team of the Hart brothers defeat Shawn Michaels' team and his Knights. And after the match, Owen Hart was the only Hart brother eliminated. After the match, Owen Hart ran down to the ring. He was pissed off and he was angry with Bret. And he pulled Bret off the second rope and he pushed him. And he was angry. It was starting to turn the wheels of the feud that would kick off in 94 between Bret Hart and Owen Hart. One of the best feuds of all time in WWF history. So that Survivor Series 93 kicked off the turning of Owen Hart heel. Up next, you had a tag team matchup, Smoky Mountain Wrestling. I believe tag titles, Smoky Mountain Tag Team Champions. The Rock and Roll Express took on and defeated the Heavenly Bodies. Defeated the Midnight Express, I think, to win the tag team titles from the Rock and Roll Express. Smoky Mountain Wrestling obviously was on Survivor Series 93 in a tag title match because Jim Cornette was running Smoky Mountain, and I guess Vince agreed to put their match on a pay-per-view. And later, of course, WWF was using a lot of talent from Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Smoky Mountain Wrestling was basically like a developmental territory for WWF. Because Heavenly Bodies would work in the WWF in 94 and 95. The Four Doinks. This match was just like a mess. It was I don't know how to describe it. It was just craziness, and it was comedy. It was a comedy match. There wasn't any wrestling involved. You had the Four Doinks, They were trying to get under Bam Bam Bigelow. Doink the Clown was trying to get under Bam Bam Bigelow's skin. Doink the Clown wasn't even involved in this match. You had the four Doinks. The Bushwhackers and Men on a Mission were the four Doinks. And they defeated the team of Bam Bam Bigelow, Bastion Booger, and the Head Shrinkers. And this match, as I said, was a mess. It was funny to watch. I did laugh. A couple spots they did. It was stupid, but it was still pretty funny. You had one of the Head Shrinkers was given a water balloon, and he bit into it. And of course it explodes and sprayed water on his face, and then he gets rolled up 1, 2, 3 and gets eliminated. And then you had another spot where somebody started, I think one of the Doinks started handing bananas to Bastion Booger. He started eating a banana in the middle of the ring. He was a disgusting, obese man, was Bastion Booger. Used to be in WCW as Norman the Lunatic. The guy looked really disgusting. And his ring gear was god-awful. I don't know what kind of ring gear that was, but it was god-awful. He just looked like a blob. He didn't look like a wrestler or a badass or a guy that you'd be scared of. He just looked like a blob. Did Bastion Booger. He bites into the banana, keeps eating it, and he gets eliminated. And the Doinks and the Bushwhackers were also biting on the ass of Bastion Booger during the match. That's how ridiculous it got. But as I said, it was a comedy. It was comedy side of WWF. It was a comedy match. Just to make the fans laugh, I guess. And it was also like a goddamn cartoon, Saturday morning cartoon. This match was. You had four Doinks. It was ridiculous. Having Men on a Mission, two black guys, and those crazy Bushwhackers from New Zealand dress up as Doinks. It was ridiculous and just idiotic. But that was the WWF in '93. They had a lot of dumbass, idiotic characters. Straight out of Saturday morning cartoons. So they defeat Bam Bam's team. And during the match, another spot, you had one of the Men on a Mission, I think a Mo, was riding around the ring in a scooter. And Bam Bam got really angry. I believe he drop kicked him off the scooter, picked the scooter up in the ring, and threw it to the outside. And then after the match, you had that song that was popular, Whoop, There It Is. You had Men on a Mission and their manager, Oscar, started rapping after the match, telling everybody put their hands in the air, raise them like they just don't care. Yes, nobody did care. It was pretty stupid. I guess some people cared because they were waving their arms, but whatever. People were brainwashed in '93 to just like what the WWF was giving them. What they were giving us was a lot of crap and a lot of cartoon PG bullshit. But they also gave us some good matches in '93, but not that many. Most of the time, '93, '94, '95 was cartoon days of the WWF. Last Survivor Series elimination match. It was the main event. Lex Luger's team, Lex Luger, the Steiner brothers, and The Undertaker defeat Yokozuna's team of the Quebecers, Luke Vigborga, Yokozuna, and Crush. So that was Survivor Series '93. It was an okay show. I'm not going to say it was bad because it wasn't bad. But it was just okay. Out of a 10, I'd give it a 5 or 6. Because I guess I was entertained by all the Survivor Series elimination matches. Because of that gimmick match. So, and Survivor Series 93 was also very sad. Bobby the Brain Heenan's last time calling a WWF pay-per-view. They should have had him work with Gorilla Monsoon, but they didn't. He worked with Vince McMahon, so it was Bobby and Vince on commentary. And Bobby and Vince were still, they were still good together. And Bobby Heenan cracked his jokes, and made fun of Vince, but it wasn't the same because Gorilla and Bobby, in my opinion, were the best commentary team in the history of wrestling. So that was sad to see Bobby Heenan go. This was his last pay-per-view, and in December, the next month, in December, towards the end, or beginning or end of December, Bobby Heenan on Raw would get taken off of commentary by Gorilla Monsoon, his real life best friend. They're very close. And Gorilla Monsoon was pulling Bobby Heenan by his shirt. And then he told him, "You've done it this time, and you're out of here." And he threw him out of the back. He threw him out of the back doors and threw him into the parking lot. And had Bobby Heenan's bag with all his stuff in it. And he threw it out of the door. That was funny as hell to watch. All of Bobby Heenan's stuff fell out of his bag. Then he had to pick it up. He was picking up toilet paper, was stuck to his shoe, and he's picking up toilet paper. Bobby Heenan, one of the funniest, entertaining guys ever. He made that segment great. And then he was staring at the camera, and then Raw ended, and he actually looked emotional. I think he was sad that he was leaving WWF and leaving his friend Gorilla Monsoon. He looked emotional when he stared at the camera, and then he walked off like basically he was fired on TV by Gorilla Monsoon. And then he walked off into the sunset, and then Raw ended. It's on a December 93 episode of Raw. If you want to check it out, it's on the network. If you have the network. If you don't, you're missing out. You should get it. Now I'm going to talk about the last show I'm going to talk about for 93. Just checking the time on this video. Was WCW Starrcade 93. Took place from Ric Flair's hometown. Starrcade 93 took place from Charlotte, North Carolina. Ric Flair was really born in Minnesota, I believe, but he's lived in North Carolina for probably over 30 years. So he considers North Carolina his home, and North Carolina is still Flair country. First match, Starrcade 93 kicked off. Tag team action. Two Cold Scorpio and Marcus Bagwell took on the team of Paul Roma and Paul Orndorff. Pretty wonderful, and they were a pretty good team. And Paul Orndorff and Paul Roma win this matchup. Up next, the Shockmaster defeated Awesome Kong in 1 minute 34 seconds. That was a fucking mess. Should have never been on Starrcade. Television championship on the line. Lord Steven Regal defended against Ricky Steamboat, and it ended in a draw. I believe it was a time limit draw. Up next, Cactus Jack and Max Payne wrestled Tex Slinginger and Shanghai Pierce. And this was not anything special. Cactus and Max Payne won. Steve Austin, stunning Steve Austin, defeated the U.S. champion Dustin Rhodes to win the title. And during this match, I believe the power went out in the arena, or the power went out on the production trucks. or the generator went out. Something happened. They must have had a backup generator, or the power just came back, because during this match the lights actually cut out and the ring was pitch black, and they put on big giant spotlights on the ring for Steve Austin and Dustin Rhodes. And then later on, finally, the power in the match later would come on and the lights would come back on in the ring. And also during this match, Dustin Rhodes, or maybe it was Steve Austin, I haven't seen the match in years, but Dustin Rhodes or Steve Austin during it bled a lot. One of them. So Steve Austin becomes the new United States champ. Up next for, I think it was for the Rick Rude's title, the International Heavyweight Championship or International title, whatever they called it. Rick Rude defeated the Boss. Who was the Boss? He was the Big Boss Man. This was his WCW pay-per-view debut for the Big Boss Man, and Rick Rude defeated him. And later on, first gimmick he came in to WCW with was the Boss. Obviously, they could not call him the Big Boss Man. I think WWF owned the name. So he was the Boss. And I guess that didn't work. So they wanted to give him a new gimmick. So they gave him the Guardian Angel gimmick. That didn't work. But it was okay. And then after the Guardian Angel, he became Big Bubba again. Or after Big Bubba, he was Big Bubba Rogers, and then as Big Bubba, he even joined the NWO when the NWO had 50 guys in it. NWO got way too big in 97 and 98. You had jobbers and mid-card guys joining it. It was ridiculous. NWO had like 50 guys in it, and it was stupid. But I'll talk about that in my future videos in 96, 97. I'll talk about the NWO and how it got way, way watered down. Up next, you had a tag team title match. The team of Sting and Road Warrior Hawk defeated the World Tag Team Champions, the Nasty Boys, by disqualification, so they did not win the titles. And Hawk would disappear and leave WCW after Starrcade 93. But he would show up again when they started Nitro in 96. Road Warrior Hawk and Animal would return to WCW 96 for Nitros and some pay-per-views in 96. And then they had a very short run and they left WCW in 96. Went to WWF in February 97. And the Nasty Boys had a new manager. She was Missy Hyatt. They wanted Missy, I guess, to be a heel manager and be with the Nasty Boys. Nobody cared at all that she was even at ringside. She was irrelevant. In the main event, this was a very good match between Ric Flair and Vader for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. I believe the stipulation was if Ric Flair did not beat Vader, he would retire. And Ric Flair defeats Vader for the WCW World title in 21 minutes 11 seconds. It was a very good match. Vader brought the best out of Ric Flair. During this match, it turned into a brawl on the outside of the ring. Flair started brawling and got into that style of wrestling because Vader made him. Flair also had to fight for his life in the match and show a lot of heart and come back to defeat the big monster Vader. That was Starrcade 93, people. And I'm done now talking about 1993. I talked about Survivor Series 93 and Starrcade 93 on this video. I also talked about the rosters and which roster was my favorite. I picked the WWF and I talked about some of the Pro Wrestling Illustrated winners in 1993. I'll be back with I'll do a video on my WWE Battleground predictions, and I'll have it up on my YouTube on Wednesday night or Thursday. So I'll start a new video. The year in wrestling 1994. I will be starting, and I'll do my first video on 94 in a couple days. Hope you enjoyed my series of videos on 1993, the year in wrestling. I'll be back, and I'll do 94 all the way up to 2015. So everybody that watched, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. And if you follow me on Twitter, thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and I really enjoy tweeting and talking to you on Twitter. If you tweet me, I'll answer you and I'll talk to you. Bye for now, everybody.